Welcome again, everyone. We are happy to have you here today for this webinar, CEO Projections for 2019, featuring Joe Galvin, Chief Research Officer for Vistage, and co-host Nanda Ming. Before I turn the program over, we have a few housekeeping notes. First, please remember to place your phone on mute and refrain from placing the call on hold to avoid any background noise or unnecessary interruptions. Second, we have reserved time for questions at the end of this webinar. If you have any questions, please ask them using the question function in the webinar access panel. The question box is in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Just type in your questions and we will read them aloud. Third, this webinar should take no longer than an hour. It will be recorded and the link will be emailed to attendees. As Chief Research Officer for Vistage, Joe Galvin is responsible for providing Vistage members with the most current, compelling, and actionable thought leadership on the strategic issues of small and mid-sized businesses. This proprietary research is focused on best practices from the exclusive Vistage community of more than 23,000 CEOs, senior executives, and business owners across a broad array of industries in 20 countries. Joe is an established thought leader and business analyst from his former roles as Chief Research Officer for CSO Insights, Miller Hyman, VP Sales Optimization Strategies at Sirius Decisions, and VP Research Director, CRM, for Gartner. Joe has published more than 500 research briefs and engaged audiences at hundreds of conferences, forums, and executive presentations around the world. Joe, take it away.
Thank you so much and welcome everyone. Thank you for investing some of your precious time to give me the opportunity to share with you the research that we do at Vistage Research. My name is Joe Galvin. I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter. I post content most every day that's focused on the issues, the topics, and decisions for SMB CEOs. And I realize for you as part of the chamber that those are your members. Those are the people that you work with. So we thought it would be interesting if we were to share with you the research that we have done that looks at the decisions, investments, and priorities of our CEO community at Vistage and share that with you because this is what your members are thinking about. These are the decisions they're facing. These are the investments they're making. And we were able to pull from our community of CEOs a great response rate. So I want to share that with you called SMB Projections. Real quickly, my role at Vistage Research is not to answer questions. It's to ask questions because only the member, only the CEO can decide what's right for their business. What we want to create with Vistage Research is a layer of research that can be trusted. And there's so much you can't trust today. But we want to be this layer of trusted, respected research that sits below the noise of the internet, but beneath the deep subject matter experts of people who focus uniquely on a single topic. We want to create a layer of knowledge and insight for our CEOs that they can go and get a deep understanding that they can trust that covers the important elements and ask the hard questions and then decide if they want to go deeper or not. Our goal is to be the SMB CEO's most trusted resource for research, data, and expert perspectives on the issues, topics, and decisions of business optimization and leadership enhancement. That's the research function. If you're familiar with Gartner, I was with Gartner for many years and came from sales to research, which is unusual, I guess. But anyway, that's where I started this business analysis and brought this now to the Vistage client base. You might ask yourself, who is Vistage? If you're not familiar with us, you've probably heard of us, but are not clear. Vistage is a really unique community. I'll be with Vistage 3 years coming July 1st, and it's just an amazing collection of humans. It's a collection of high integrity, high performance CEOs who strive to get better. What Vistage provides is executive coaching anchored by a peer advisory board. So you get the benefit of your Vistage chair, an experienced, knowledgeable business person to work with on your issues and then bring your issues to the group. And in that group, you'll get 14 or 15 other CEOs, non-competitive, different verticals, different markets, family-owned, I mean, just the whole array. And what you get is this amazing collection of insight from people who are dealing with the same issues. So it's a very powerful organization, and I'm blessed because I've been tasked with tapping into those folks, what they are defining as important, where they're spending their time, what are their priorities, and bringing that to light and sharing that both with our Vistage community as well as other communities like this. So I would invite you to listen as if you were your members. Because when I'm talking to and when I present, wherever I'm presenting at, I'm always talking to that CEO, that business owner, that leader, that key executive, the entrepreneur, because it's a very unique community and one that I think we've uniquely tapped into. So I like to begin by talking about where we were just a year ago, because if you think back to a year ago, maybe a little bit more than that now, I used to describe it as the good old days. I'd say, these are the good old days. You look back 2018, low interest rates, easy access to capital, not too much really going on. It's a good time to be in business. And we see our confidence index, and this is something we've tracked since 2003, the aggregated sentiment of our CEOs across the same 8 questions we ask every 4 times a year. And you can see here it reaches a 10-year high. I mean, going all the way back to the Great Recession, which is kind of the bookend we're dealing with today. This is a 5-year high. And I used to say, 2018, those are the good old days. Now we find this theme of confidence with caution inside our community. Confidence with caution is a theme for our projections 2019 report, because what we see is a high degree of confidence in our CEOs and their abilities to grow their business, but great concern and great caution about the environment, the economic environment they're playing in. If you look here, this is our most recent survey this was taken in early March. You can see from that high of 2018, we've now fallen 5 consecutive quarters that the confidence index has fallen. What's meaningful about that is, one, the numbers. We had over 1,700 CEOs participate. But when you track our confidence index to GDP, you'll see up until the last 2 years, it's tracked 3, 6, 9 months very, very closely. We think in looking at that gap, and you can see that right now our confidence is where we were before the election. But now you can see then we were surging, and now we're on the backside of a business cycle. So if you look at this, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 business cycles. So when we think about the caution is, where are we at in the business cycle, and when is the GDP line going to catch up? Well, we'll see how GDP progresses. We work a lot with ITR research. They do amazing work. They speak at all of our events, and they believe that we'll see a slowdown in 2019 into 2020. Which is just a continuation of the business cycle before, mid-year 2020, we start to see it take a turn and go up. And the thing we talk to members about when you talk about business cycles is there'll be a top and a bottom, and you can't guess where it is. But the degree to which you can understand where your business is against that cycle allows you to take advantage of the downside to make some investments or maybe acquire someone, but also at the peak to know that maybe it's time to back off a little bit. If we break this down deeper, what we see is this balance of caution with confidence with caution. We'll start with caution. 29% of our CEOs, looking backwards, thought the economy had recently improved. Now that's down from 60s and 70s of 2018, right? Looking forward, only 14% of CEOs believe that the economy will improve going forward. So there's real caution. But we go back to confidence, and we see 70% believe they'll see increased revenues. Now that's growth on top of growth on top of growth. This is compounded growth. So you continue to see businesses grow and surge, 70% of which thinks they'll increase revenues, 58% increase profits. That's confidence. And backing that up are the actions, where 41% are going to increase. Now that's on top of the 47% who are going to maintain their level of investment. This is 41% who are going to increase their investment in the year, and 59% plan to increase their workforce. Everywhere I go, I ask people, are you planning to increase your workforce? And I swear it's usually 70, 80% of the room says that. So we see this confidence with caution, and now I'm going to add a third dimension to that, and that's confusion. There's more confusion than ever out in the markets around the policies. Tariffs are here, tariffs come off. China, Mexico, steel, aluminum goes away, double down on China. China threatens to come back. There's no end in sight to that trade war. We see the dysfunction from both sides when you talk about Washington and policies, and then you see some of the other challenges and issues. It creates a high degree of confusion. And that's the environment that we see our folks playing in, is this mix of confidence with caution, and now a fair amount of confusion. And that's the foundation for our report, is confidence with caution, because that's what our CEOs are telling us, that they are highly confident, but they're greatly concerned, or they see concerns. We'll go in and we'll talk about the key decisions. And so I'd ask you again to think as your member, but what do you think are the big decisions that your members are facing? What is it that they're trying to decide that's going to, there's a lot of decisions you make every day, but it's those big, fate of your business, fortune of your business type of decisions, the ones with real consequence, the ones that maybe you can't back out of so quickly. What are those decisions? Well, then look at investments, because once you've made that decision, now you got to reach for the wallet and make the investments in people, in resource, in technology, if that's the play, in a building, whatever that is. And then we'll summarize and spend a little bit of time talking about the key takeaways, because what this captures are the priorities of the SMB CEO. We asked them across a continuum of categories what their priorities were, and it's interesting insight into where their heads are and the things that they're doing about that. So let's set this up by talking about the fact that it's hard to be a CEO. We think CEO's job is really hard because CEOs are in the business of making decisions. That's what they do. That's what CEOs do every day. They make decisions, small inconsequential decisions, and those big, fate and fortune of your business decisions we talked about before. We wanted to think about how we help our members make better decisions, and really, how do people come to decisions? What do they make decisions? And we created this concept called optimized decision making, and it starts with a question. Again, I said my job is to ask questions, not answer them. I'm going to ask a lot of questions here. How do you make important decisions? Think about that. How do you make an important decision? Well, one of our amazing chairs, Greg Buston down in Dallas, just published a book called How Leaders Decide, to help answer that question. What he did is he found 52 short stories, one for every week, to get CEOs to think about the scenario, the facts as they know them, and the decisions and the impacts. And it ranges from Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon to Barack Obama choosing to take out bin Laden. It's an excellent collection, but one of the stories that captured me that he talks about was John F. Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. He had totally blown the Bay of Pigs, total disaster. Now, you're 9 months, 12 months down the road, and now the Russians are putting missiles into Cuba. And it talks about his decision-making style, how he learned from how he had the bad decision he made before, and he spoke to his advisors, he spoke to his military people, he took himself out of rooms, but he knew ultimately that history would judge him based on this decision, well, the actual series of decisions. It's a fascinating study in how he altered his decision-making style in terms of the input that he takes and how he took it to get to the result. He kept his humor along the way. I've admired his quote, "I hope you realize there's not enough room for all of us in the White House bunker." So I don't think anyone out there is making decisions at this level in terms of like survival of humanity. But the decisions you make that are important, it really begs the question of how do you make important decisions? So what we created was a real simple model. There's some very elegant and wonderfully done academic models about how we make decisions, things like cognitive bias and all that stuff. I wanted to try to simplify it a little bit and think about it in terms of decision making is a function of importance and complexity, right? The more important a decision, the more complex the decision, the more energy we put into it. When things are simple and things are easy and things are clear cut, we can just rely on our instinct. We don't have to spend a lot of time. We can just go. And you've probably done that a dozen times already today, just doing an email alone. But as things get harder, more complex, they've got greater significance, we now apply our judgment, our experience, our knowledge, what we've learned, what we've seen, what we're trying to fix, accomplish, or avoid, what our goals are, our beliefs, all the things that make up our conscious mind as we focus on what this decision is. It's when decisions get really important and really complex and, oh, by the way, really expensive, that we now seek the perspectives of people we trust. And the example I'd like you to think about is maybe you remember when you bought your first home. Stepped out of the car, you looked at the house, and you knew you were going to buy it or not. That's your instinct telling you wanted that house. Then judgment kicks in, right? Is it close to the schools? Does it have a 2-car garage? Have a place for the dog? Whatever's important to you, right? Can I afford it? And then, if you're like me, you call people you trust. My brother-in-law, Roger, is a contractor. Hey, Roger, can you look at this house? What about this crack in the foundation? How about the roof? It's going to hold. My financial advisor, Gene. Hey, Gene, what's the right mortgage for me? How do I do this? I talked to my father-in-law, Don, what's your opinion? You take those trusted perspectives, you now add them to your judgment. And when you sign that contract to buy that house, that feeling in your stomach, that was your instincts telling you made a good decision. That's our concept of optimized decision making. It's a balance of your instincts, your judgment, and the perspectives you incorporate to get to the best decision. It also leads us to a concept we call the Vistage decision model. And I share this with you because it's a framework we use to identify and focus on the individual decisions that members make. This is a model not for how to make decisions. We talked about that, but this is a model of the decisions you have to make. The decisions you have to make as a leader. First, it starts with yourself as a leader. How do you show up every day? How do you show up as a leader? What are the attributes, the behaviors, the competencies of a leader, and how do you demonstrate those? Next, you have to make decisions about how you will lead, the process of leadership, the disciplines of leadership. How do you do strategic planning? How do you do communications? How do you drive culture? How is it that you actually lead? And then, of course, there's the elements of the business that you're trying to pull together. When you combine our concept of optimized decision making with the categories of business optimization, you now have got a window, a view, if you will, a lens of the decisions leaders have to make, and how any decision in any one of these areas affects all of them. You're going to add a new CRM system. Well, that's going to affect operations from the technology side. You're going to have to make sure you've got the right people in place and you can afford it, let alone how you want this to change how you interact with customers. How will that allow you, or how will that force you to change your management style, to now A, drive adoption of that system, but B, incorporate the new data, new insights, and potentially even AI type stuff coming through that. And then as a leader, how do you leverage that? So this is a model that we use, and to think about, I'd ask you to think about, these are the decisions that leaders have to make. So again, this is where we come in as Vistage Research, is to provide that layer of perspective that can be trusted and respected, because we're going to bring in data from our members. We're going to incorporate the experts that exist within our speakers, our sponsors, and our members, and then we're going to apply our lens to it and share that to members. And what I'm going to share with you here is some of what that output looks like. So let's get into key decisions. Key decisions for 2019. Now, this is data that we took in December. We do this every year. We ask our members in December this question: what are the major decisions you'll have to make regarding your business in 2019? So, when you come into the year, it's like, what are the big decisions? And you could fast forward to today and say, what are the big decisions you're facing right now? So what do you think the top 10, what do you think the top answer would be? What are the most important decisions that CEOs, your members, are dealing with right now? Well, recruiting, hiring, recruitment, and sourcing is at the top of the list. Last year it was the top of the list as well. We see talent and the challenge with talent is a big issue. We're calling it the talent wars, and we'll talk to that in a minute. But again, you'll also see a reflection here in these topical areas, consistency with confidence with caution. Recruiting and hiring, that's growth. Market development, that's growth. Caution, productivity execution. Caution, financial management. Caution, capital cash. People, performance management. Technology, productivity. Mergers, acquisitions, growth. So you see those themes play out. But when we take all of the responses and we ask for what are your top 3 from over 1,200, and you'll see we got 3,000 responses, we see that they group into the categories of our decision model, with talent once again coming out at the top of the list in terms of what's the biggest category of decisions that people are making. So we ask this question, and we talk about winning the talent war. If hiring workers has become more difficult, what are you doing in response? We saw earlier that everybody's hiring 61%, but we see more hands than that. The thing about the current challenge here with the hiring wars is that there are more jobs than there are people. At 3.6 unemployment rate, we're effectively at full employment. In some markets, it's even lower than that. So the question becomes, if you're trying to hire workers, where are you going to get them? Because chances are you're looking for the top people. I'm willing to bet, right? Aren't we all? But the top people already have jobs, right? They're already working. Top people aren't out of work and looking for work at full employment. In fact, top people are trying to keep their phone mail clear of all the recruiters calling them, trying to recruit them away. So you're trying to hire top people, but as we said, they have jobs, and your top people are also getting calls. And that's the double-edged sword of this talent war, is that it's not just about hiring, but it's about your workers. And the data shows that. Look at this. When we ask if workers are more difficult, what are you doing in response? The top answer was developing the existing workforce. It's CEOs recognize the importance of the people they have in their building today. And let's face it, in small and mid-sized business, you're heavily dependent on people. In an enterprise organization, if somebody leaves, it's next man up, and the processes are in place and the wheels roll. In a smaller business, your processes and workflows are often built around the humans themselves. Consequently, when someone steps out, it creates a major disruption. It requires real innovative thinking in terms of how to rebuild that. So it was really interesting here that developing the existing workforce, caring for, engaging, and securing, ensuring that your existing workforce is happy and engaged, that's pretty important. I mean, we see things like boosting wages, adding benefits, and all that coming. There's different elements that we see come into this, but in place of hiring, where hiring is critical, it's all about really ensuring that the people you have are in place. And the reason that's so important is because in the people that are looking for, as you're recruiting for someone, they want to look at your organization and know that it's stable. They don't want to see that people are leaving. Well, why is this job open? Is this job open because somebody left, or is this job open because we're adding more headcount, because we're growing? What's really interesting about the talent war at this particular moment in time is, as we go to a slowdown, the power really resides with the employee and the person who's looking for work. Because in the last, think back to the Great Recession, right? If you lost your job, I mean, you were out of work for 12 months, 18 months. And then when you came in 2 or 3 levels lower than where you were. Today, if the employee looks at the small or mid-sized business owner and say, yeah, I'm not sure they're going to make it, they're making some cuts, people are leaving. Well, there's 3 or 4 other opportunities just waiting for them within driving distance of where they live. So it shifts tremendous pressure onto the leader to ensure that you create an environment that is nurturing, that people feel impassioned about. We talk about employee engagement. To what degree are your employees willing and frequently give discretionary effort? Do they leave at 4:59 because that's when the bell rings, or do they stay till they get the work done? Think about your organization. Think about the organization. Well, think about the organization of your members. Um, who's really engaged and what do they contribute versus someone who's maybe not as engaged? And what do they bring? And really, what is that not engaged person's impact on the business? And that's why we see employee engagement emerging as a very important data point. In fact, employee engagement is to your employees as net promoter score or customer satisfaction is to your customers. It's becoming that important because the pressure to hire and I think one of the greatest throttles on our economy right now is the absence of workforce at all levels, from the factory floor to the corner office. Everybody's hiring. Everybody wants great people. They want skilled people. They want people that are willing to work. And it's creating tremendous pressure. And the result of that is that what we see here in this data point, and the point I'm trying to drive home, is the importance of ensuring the people you have in place are motivated, they're connected to your culture, they're engaged in their job, and they are long-term employees. It kind of leads to talking about what are the big battles that we see people are fighting when it comes to the talent wars. And we just spent time talking about employee engagement. Winning the hearts and minds. I asked a CEO once, how many people work for you? And she said, about half. Right? So you need to think about it. How many people are actually working for any enterprise? And what can you do to, isolate those that aren't maybe contributing their share, motivate those who are doing well but could do better, and then really celebrate those who really represent and epitomize what your office and what your culture is like. So employee engagement is a topic that we'll be doing more work on in the fall, and one that we see more and more organizations really gravitating towards. Next is employee development. We touched that a little bit more, but it's more than just improving performance. It's what if I train them and they leave? What if you don't train them and they stay? A big part of employee development is the type of training you get. And I'm not talking about job specific or job skill specific training. I'm talking about training in other aspects of life. Wellness has taken on a large dimension in many companies that promote that as part of their culture. Professional development, professional engagement. What are you doing to connect other departments, collaboration, and organization play? The key thing about employee development is that your employees see a path forward for both self-improvement, job performance improvement, and career improvement. So the big battle to win here before you go out and hire is get them engaged and continue their development. Automate the repetitious. We're a long way from Terminator and Skynet ruling all things, but we do see the rise of automation everywhere. You can't deny that. And the key to understand here is that at this point in evolution, again, we're a long way from Skynet, but at this point in the evolution, what we're looking to do is to remove the mundane, to take away the routine. The tasks that we can automate and give to a technology is not to eliminate or reduce people, rather it's to free the people that you have up to do those uniquely human things. Things like collaboration, creativity, connecting with customers. Those are the things that when you take humans out of having to enter data or do other mundane activities, and this includes on the shop floor too. When you can take away when you can automate the repetitious, you free humans up to do more of those uniquely human value add things. So looking for automating repetition from factory floor to spreadsheets and everything else that all the other decision tools and intelligence tools that people are using is another way to augment the talent challenge that you're going to have by getting more from the people you got. And then finally, and this gets back to the original question, which is you have to accept the fact that you will always be recruiting. That it's not the job that you have open today or the jobs you've opened today, but the ones that will be open in 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years. When you look at your growth and when you think about where you want to be and the type and the number of people, let alone the type of people that you want, it suggests that you need to put together a long-term talent management strategy. And you need to embrace the function of recruiting and sourcing with the same energy you do pursuing new customers. Have you aligned with marketing to help shape and craft and project your business's image, your culture, out into the marketplace? It gets to a conversation of culture. Culture has never been more important than it is today. I sense that just from everyone that we speak to and all the interactions that I have, because it's a culture that is a differentiator. It's a culture that we like to think that culture is like your gravity. It's what holds your great people to you. It's the magnetic force that repels those people that maybe you hire and don't fit in. And most importantly, it's attracting people who want to work for a business like yours. So I think you need to accept the reality that you will always be recruiting. In a growth mode, you will always be hiring, and that you need to create the brand of your culture and project that and radiate that out of the market to attract people and build a brand reputation in your community, so people will think about you as a place that they want to work. So that's pretty big stuff. But to help you with that, we've created a document guide to talent planning. We did this in association with the National Center for the Middle Market out of The Ohio State University. A gentleman named Tom Stewart over there runs an excellent research program. And we partnered with them on this to give you just some frameworks and some ways for CEOs to think about how do you manage talent. And again, this would be something that you could easily, I would be happy for you to share this with your members and have this discussion with them if you think the talent wars is relevant to them. All right, well, let's step forward then. Let's go in and we're going to talk for a minute about major investments. We talked about confidence and we see where the decisions are, but what do you think the big areas of investment are? Right, where do you think it is that people will be spending money in 2019? Right, we know that 41% are going to increase their investments. Another 47%, I believe, are maintaining investments. So people are spending money. What do you think they're spending it on? Technology. Second year in a row that technology is at the top of the list. You know, but look again, you see examples of growth. Facilities, office building, right? I'm gonna add space because I'm adding people. I'm gonna get more equipment because I just bought a new, X square foot facility. I'm gonna market because I need to be able to reach out. There are customers out there that we can go out and get who want what we have. And then we get into the people issues again. So again, we put these together and you'll see a massive shift, as you would expect, in investments over into operations. What's interesting though is just 0.7% are investing in leadership. And much of that represents obviously their participation as being part of a Vistage group. But I wonder how much people are really investing in employee development and leadership development. Because while you're sitting here on this call, or you're more importantly, if your members were to be listening to this call, it's what their leaders are doing when they're not leading that drives the business. So I think there's an opportunity here to think more about investments in leadership. But we see the big shift into operations, and what's driving it is technology. Let's face it, technology is a generational change agent. That when history looks back on this particular point of evolution in the human journey, it'll equate the discovery of technology up there with the discovery of fire, steam, electricity, the internal combustion engine. It is a unique energy that is powering humanity forward. And we've seen that change, each of us in our own generations, but technology's changed everything. And it's one of the things that is common across all of our members, across all businesses, right? No business, or at least very few businesses, operate in paper anymore. It's all technology driven. We maintain our customers' information in our CRM systems. We maintain our financial reporting and results, our master customer files, our order, ship, and bill. Those exist in ERP and financial systems. Maybe you keep track of your people in a human capital management system. Maybe you do this in spreadsheets and pivot tables. Different people do it different way. But we've all transitioned into a technology away from a paper-based approach. And that's why we see across all businesses, regardless of size or vertical market, technology plays such a critical role. And it's a place where people are spending money. And I'm betting largely that much of that incremental investment is into business applications. When you talk about technology, I like to separate out hardware, people, infrastructure, telecom, all that stuff. Let's zero in on business applications, because it's the applications that really what makes all the technology connect, because it brings up data from a shared repository of data. It brings that data up against specified attributes that come in the form of the question or however that's pre-positioned, and then it generates data with the ability to invert and view and spin that data however you want. It's the power behind what the computers that process the data and collect the data, and then the piles of data that are managed in databases. It's really the magic that brings it together. So we asked this question: which business software applications do you expect to invest in over the next 12 months? So what technologies are people spending money on? What do you think those would be? Well, customer relationship management at the top of the list, right? CRM, it's always the right answer to get closer to your customers. In all markets, in all economies, in all phases of growth, it is always the right answer to get closer to your customers. So to see that CRM is at the top of the list is not a surprise. CRM data is really volatile because think about everyone in your organization that touches a customer. Billing, customer service, front-end sales, shipping, distribution, actual delivery in a professional services. Think about everyone who touches the customer. And now, do they all understand everything they need to know about that customer? Well, you can tell, and you deal with it. I deal with it every day. Organizations that know you and don't know you. And in small and mid-sized business, if you don't know your customers, oh, you got some other problems to solve. So it's great to see this, but it also represents how important customers are, right? Also interesting to me here is that cybersecurity only got 30%, only a third, less than a third of companies are investing in cyber, and that's a little scary because our data is so important. But if you look at this and you run down all these applications, you can see they're all about driving productivity, improving performance and productivity through the streamlining and the automation of business workflows and processes, allowing the technology to do what it does and empowering that now liberated human with access to data and insights that maybe they couldn't have before, or maybe access to that in an instant versus having to wait, ask for reports, and get that data. What's powerful about this is you'll see when we take the folks that are doing other, and that's homegrown, create your own, home app dev. I'm not a big proponent of that, especially the smaller you are. And then we're not doing anything. It shows that 78% of our members are investing in technology. They're reaching for the wallet. They've made the decision. They're reaching for the wallet. And now they have the real leadership challenge of the art of execution. Is being able to buy a piece of technology is one thing, but to be able to integrate it, to be able to align it with your other systems, to be able to bring it online, and then to train and have everyone who uses the system embrace that system, that's the leadership challenge. That's why we think leadership's the art of execution, but we're not going to go there. So it's clear that technology, if you think about your chamber, your business, but also your members' business, we are so reliant on our data, our financial data that we use not just to keep track of where we are, but to bill and to be billed. Our customer data, the people that actually comprise our business, and our employees, the people that actually do the work. And that's why I want to make a point here for a second, and that is imagine that this is what you requested access to data, and this is what you got. Imagine if you had been hacked, and I would ask you this question: has anyone been hacked? Has anyone seen this window? This is a Malibu virus. I'd say it's about a third of the time now when I show this, someone's experienced it. This is ransomware. This is someone who has, through one means or another, has been able to lock down your data and denied you any access to that. Now imagine for a minute in your business, or even more importantly, in your member's business, CEO, imagine you have no data, no access to data, no financial data, can't take orders, can't pay bills, no customer data, can't call customers, can't give customers information, no people data, right? Can't pay people, right? Can't process expenses. What would that do to your business? Well, this is the cyber boogeyman, right? And this is why in our research that we did last year, we found an astonishing number that 64% small and mid-sized businesses were unprepared for the cyber threats that exist today. And I could literally spend the rest of the hour talking about some of the crazy cyberness that I've heard about. But I'd ask you this question, ask you to answer it honestly. Because we found a year ago, 24% had been hacked, and our update went to 27%. And when I speak to cyber experts, they tell me that number is widely underreported. The cyber attacks are a clear and present danger to your business. We developed a very simple framework to help folks get through this. We have a research note I'll share with you in a minute, right? But it starts with your people. The most vulnerable point in your cyber system, your cybersecurity system, is your people. It's getting someone to click on a bad link, open a bad attachment, and bang, they're in. Next, it's the process. Those annoying updates you get for your phone and computer, 90% of that are security patches. Do you have a process to update and back up your data to constantly be changing and rotating passwords? And then, of course, technology. It's the firewalls and other tools, threat detection, threat detention type stuff that sit out there that you really need to think about. If your business is dependent on data, if you imagine that dark screen for a minute, then you need to take this seriously. Cyber attacks are a silent killer of small business, right? You need to assess the strength of your cybersecurity strategy today. Where are you today? Do you have an active strategy? Do you have one, but maybe it's lapsed, or do you have nothing at all? You'll be surprised how many have nothing at all. You need to create a layered defense, that people, process, and technology metaphor. Think about insurance. It'll mitigate your cost and legal exposure, but it will not mitigate the ridiculous brand hit and credibility hit your business will take and you will take. What do you think your competitors would do if they knew that your customer data had been compromised? How do you think they might use that in a selling situation? Or better, how could you use it if you knew that, right? Insurance won't prevent the credibility hit you'll take. And you need to involve an expert. You have a doctor, you have a lawyer, get a cybersecurity expert. And we have a report. I'll share that with you in a minute. So those are the key decisions and investments. I wanted to shift and spend the last bit of our time here focused on the key takeaways, because it kind of brings together a number of the things that we've spoken about over the course of the last 36 minutes. And it'll help us kind of, again, I want to get you thinking. More importantly, I want you to get to thinking about what your members are thinking about or should be thinking about. And that's really what this is what are the key takeaways? What do we really learn from this across those elements of the decision model? Well, for talent management, it's become very clear that employee development is the key. I have the privilege of going to all of our Vistage executive summits that we do. We've done 9, I think, here in this quarter, 8 or 9. And I get a chance to engage and talk to our members, get a chance to sit in the round tables and the networking sessions. And everyone's talking about employee development. Everyone's talking about the talent crunch and the talent challenge. And so it's no surprise that when we asked priorities, it was retention and employee development. And I'd really ask you to think about, both in your business and in your members' business, is how important your employees are, especially when there is not an active pool of top talent ready, that much of your business process workflow and much of your culture is wrapped around your key employees. I don't know if you've lost a key employee over the last 6 or 9 months, but when I ask people about that, it's a painful experience. Consequently, the number one strategy, or the first thing to do when you think about adding people, is protecting and defending the people that you have, right? It's taking care of the people in your organization that you're dependent on. When's the last time you took out one of your top performers, took them out to lunch to just say thanks? Hey, thanks. What employee recognition programs do you have in place, right? What development programs do you have in place for your people? And again, like I said earlier, this is not just, job skill training, but it might be lifestyle training. It might be health training. It might be, having some adventure speaker come in and say, here's what I learned climbing Mount Everest. But do you have a program in place? Do you have goals wrapped around it? Do you know what you're trying to accomplish? But more importantly, what do you see as a potential in developing and creating a development program? And I'd ask you to think about it from an employee standpoint. What is it about employee development? Is it something I have to do and check the box? Or am I encouraged and am I interested in this because it's connecting dots beyond my specific job performance? So in talent, it's employee development. It's the concept we talked about, employee engagement. How engaged are your employee? And again, this is part of employee development, is a key part of your overall employee culture. Let's talk next about the customer engagement and what you connecting with customers. And as I said earlier, connecting with customers, getting closer to customers is always the right answer in every economy, but especially in a slowing economy, because your customers will be feeling pain as well. Your customers will be, having cash flow issues. They'll be having order issues. They'll be having all types of issues. That's why it's so important as you go into a slowdown that you circle the wagons first around your customers. Make sure you help them. Make sure you work with them. Do everything you can to ensure that your impact on their slowdown is as minimal or positive to them as possible. Because what that does is that sets a stage for when the business cycle hits bottom and begins to come back, your customers will reward you with their loyalty, and they'll reward you with their conversations about how well you treated them. And maybe, just maybe, your competitors won't be doing such a good job. Maybe your competitors will seek to pass their pain on to their customers and hide behind the economy, hide behind the slowdown. Well, that just be the perfect opportunity that when things come back and business start to grow, to go in and maybe take a run at that competitor's account and see if you can't earn their business. Interesting here that the priority is customer service and sales. Last year it was marketing and sales, as we were in the good old days. Now you see the shift to customer service. Every person in your organization who touches a customer has the chance to influence them. Now, some touches are more important than others. There's no debate on that. But when you think about all the different areas, all the touch points from a customer standpoint, where and how they touch their business, customer service and customer experience becomes just a huge topic. So let's ask these questions. What priority do you place on customer service, especially in a slowdown, especially when things aren't going as well? What is a priority that you place on customer service, right? Do you measure satisfaction, net promoter score, right? What do you think you'd find if you did? I asked this at a meeting. I think it was in Vancouver a couple of weeks ago, and I said, how many people? I asked the group. I said, how many people? What percentage of your people touch the customer? And a woman said right away, everybody. And if you think about it, everybody in the business, even if they don't touch the customer, their work in some way, shape, or form touches the customer. So it comes back to this bigger issue, that customer service getting closer to your customers is absolutely the right answer in all economies. How you go about doing it is based on those economies. All right, so let's take another step forward here. There we go. Operations. We talked about technology, both the wonder and the dark side of technology. But there's no question that technology is changing everything, and it will continue to change. I mean, emerging technologies. We have a report on artificial intelligence, and while just a small percentage, 6.7% of members are actually using that today, artificial intelligence is absolutely in your future. It's in all of our futures. It's probably not tomorrow or next week, but it's coming. I mean, you can't watch a sporting event without some AI commercial for something. But it comes back to the generational change, the seismic change of technology and how it's changed everything about our lives, our personal lives and our business lives. But technology does what it does pretty cleanly. My concept is that it is process that powers productivity, and it's technology that powers the process. And that's why we see this concept of digital transformation, of organizations embracing a digital first outlook and approach, and move away from what I think we all went through, which was a digital transition of moving our paper-based systems into spreadsheets and databases and other applications, versus now completely re-engineering how we work based on capitalizing on the power of the technology. No surprise when you talk about operations, it's productivity and technology. You always want to get more for less in operations. You want to see that your productivity per person is growing up, and the way to do that is clearly through technology. Here's some questions, right? What processes are you considering or planning to digitize or automate? Are you taking the processes that were built around Steve and Bill and Susan and Karen, or are you looking at the workflow that has to happen, how your technology can best do that, and then wrapping the people around that? What training do you have in place? Did you buy and plug it in and help people think that people would figure it out just like you and I figured out our cell phones? Yeah, probably not. So what are you doing about that? And then, of course, who's responsible? This comes back to culture again, to leadership, art of execution. Getting people to use and value the systems. So that's operations. Again, this all connects to our decision model. We talk about financial management. In a slowing economy, it's going to be, cash is king. There's no debate. Cash is king. Although I will tell you that customers will always rule. But in financial management, it's really, do you have your fingers on the pulse of your business? Do you have the right KPIs in place? Are you looking too much in the rearview mirror? Or do you have the ability to not just see where you are, but have some sense of where you're going and what that means? Again, as the slowdown approaches, financial management and cash capital are clearly the priorities. But it really gets to a question of we all ride the economic waves. We're all riding that business cycle, and it ebbs and flows based on verticals and geographies to some degree. But it's really about where are you on that cycle? Where is your businesses compared to the cycle, and what do you measure? Do you have the right leading indicators? Do you know when we will be at the bottom and start to come up? How will you know that? Will you know it because all of a sudden you look in the rear view and see that numbers are improving? Or will you be able to look forward and project that? So the key question here is are your KPIs aligned to strategy? Are you going where you want to go? And do you have the metrics to know if you're going to get there? And then finally, we talk about leadership. This has become more and more prevalent. We touched on culture before, but the CEO's ability to instill and communicate a strong culture. It really has become all about culture, especially in this environment where the workforce rules. So it wasn't, again, a surprise to see culture and communication were the CEO priorities. And I'd ask you to stop and think about your culture, but more importantly, think about how your members might view culture or how they think about culture in their organization. We asked this question, how would you describe your culture? If you were to ask your newest employee or your longest serving employee, how would you do that? And then what investments are you making in culture? We're going to do some work on culture in the fall. I'll be happy to share it with you. But culture has clearly risen to the top in terms of priorities, but also a driving force. And that brings us together. These are the topics that we wanted to share, that we wanted to talk about. This is the research that I share with small and mid-sized business CEOs, business owners, presidents, entrepreneurs, everywhere I go. We reference a lot of research. This will all be made available to you. Our confidence index that was taken in Q1, early March. The document projections, which is the foundation for this. We recently did a webinar on this, just with Mark Emmer and Kathleen Quinn Vautau, two of our folks that contributed, and just going deeper and adding color to some of the key highlights I touched on today, and we go deeper in the report. And you can always find all of our content at the Vistage Research Center. Go to vistage.com, jump over to the Research Center, and you'll always find content that fits our definition of content that you can trust, content that's going to be focused on what CEOs say are most important, and will always be wrapped with data and expert perspectives. We referenced our cyber threats and our guided talent plan, and you're welcome to those as well. I'd also quickly call your attention to a report we just published last week on innovation. Not surprising that all companies innovate, but there was a real difference between how high growth small and mid-sized business innovates and the frequency as compared to those that are flat to no growth. And that's Vistage Research. That's what we do at Vistage. Our Vistage Research is to understand and try to become that key resource. It's a real pleasure. I've got a great job in that I get to understand, analyze, and engage with an amazing community of high-performing, high-integrity, small and mid-sized business leaders. Vistage is a really unique place because it pulls together a type of person who wants to not only improve, but want to share, wants to help, wants to be vulnerable, wants to learn. I like to talk about high performers, and one thing high performers know is that you're only as good as you are today, and that you have to get better every day. And I think that epitomizes Vistage members. We also see a clear performance advantage. Folks have been part of Vistage for more than a couple of years. So with that, before we take questions, what I'd like to do is like to introduce you to my friend Nanda Meng. Nanda runs our U.S. markets program and is the person responsible for giving me the privilege of sharing our research with you to talk about what partnering with Vistage might mean for you and your chamber. And then we'll come back and we'll take some questions. So Nanda, let me pass it to you real quick.
Thank you so much, Joe. And so to get to those questions quickly, real quickly, we would welcome the opportunity to partner with you. And as part of that partnership, your member would be part of an exclusive confidential CEO group. They'd be able to get monthly coaching from a Vistage chair, and they would have access to thought leaders and subject matter experts who challenge their thinking at speaker workshops and events. And what's in it for you as chamber CEOs and executive would be the opportunity to establish a new revenue stream as part of our referral marketing revenue program. You'd be able to leverage, our content, which Joe just talked about, as well as all the great research that Joe has done and will be doing in the future. And you'd have access to over 1,000 of our speakers, facilitators, and executive coaches to leverage for your events and meetings. And so for next steps to contact us, we do have a dedicated landing page with more information, and you can get to that page at vistage.com/chamber, or you can email us at chambers@vistage.com. We are also going to be at the convention in July. We'll have a booth. We'll have lots of information to share, and I personally look forward to speaking with all of you. And so with that, let's get to those questions. So we do have some questions that came in. One for you, Joe, is as a CEO, what are some of the key takeaways for improving customer service in chambers?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we're seeing more and more energy around customer service, customer experience. Depending on how you choose to define that. But I think there's a couple elements. One is, does the resource have a clear understanding of its role, its function, and the problems that it is capable of solving? Two, does it have has it been trained in terms of both, listening on calls, but actual training on how to handle and process those interactions? But I think probably most importantly is, could your customer service agent, do they have the soft skills of empathy and the ability to connect with the humans they engage with? Again, assuming this is a human-to-human interaction, right? Do they have the listening skills? Do they have the empathy skills? And do they have the ability to articulate your brand promise, your purpose, or whatever statement of meaning, to be able to connect that back to the customer? Because again, we all more frequently sit on the other side of that customer experience, and typically it's banging up against a big company. But if you think about working with some of the small companies that you work with, or what it would be like in that environment, those customer service agents are really the personality of your business. They express and project what your brand value is, and people build relationships. So again, the question to consider is not just, do they have the job proficiency skills, but have you done the training in terms of the right types of empathy, the listening, the human interaction skills, and can they articulate your brand promise? And I think when those things come together, you have an opportunity to, one, satisfy, delight, and all the words that go with customer experience. But most importantly, it's about building relationships. And those relationships may be a once-a-year phone call, or it might be problem solving all the time, depending on that. but it's really a way for you to create a relationship that goes beyond the digital connectivity that we all have in these points. So it's a great question, and again, it shows why customer service came up as a top priority when you talk about customer engagement.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. We have another question. When difficult to get management on board with investing in cybersecurity, any takeaways?
Well, the question comes from two ways, because the way the question was structured, it sounded like it's coming from the IT leader to the CIO or to the CEO, saying, "Hey, CEO," or maybe it's a board going to a CEO trying to get attention. But cybersecurity is not an IT issue. Cybersecurity is a CEO issue. It is an issue of governance. It's an issue of security. You have security for your building. You have you have security for your money. You need to think about security for your data as of equal importance. Your data is your crude oil of your business. Your data is what makes your machine work without breaking. And to not change your oil in your car, or not to protect your oil from leaking out, or allowing someone to corrupt your oil, you need to think about it in those terms. And that's why I think, again, this is a CEO issue. Clearly, IT has a responsibility, especially on the technology side and a lot of the process side, but it's also a human issue. In so many instances, it's a human that clicks on a bad attachment. When the DNC and John Podesta got hacked by the Russians, that was because Podesta clicked on a bad link. When was the last time you got an email from someone saying, that you don't know, saying click on this, or hey, I had someone last week say, hey, I need you to send me that money. But that type of stuff goes on all the time. So this is a CEO issue. And again, the analogy I use is, when you drove to work today, did you wear a seatbelt? Why? Because statistically that should you be in an accident, you haven't been in an accident for 30 years, you may never be in an accident, but should you be in an accident, it'll still hurt, but your rate of survivability goes way up, right? Instead of just having a bruise on your shoulder, your head doesn't crack on the steering wheel, or you go through the windshield, God forbid. So you make that assessment every day, and you invest the 2 seconds it takes to put on your seatbelt, or maybe it's the ticket part, I don't know. But think about your data in the same way, right? You're going to get hacked. Someone's going to come after your data. They already are. The question is, do you have the defense in place to do that? And that will soften the blow. It may not stop it, but it'll soften the blow. And it's not a big company thing either. You think, you hear the city of Baltimore, as we speak, is currently suffering. They can't bill people for water. People can't pay their water bills, 2 or 3 other areas. This is a real fact. This is the dark side of the amazing things that technology has brought to our lives. And I just have it as a personal mission to ensure that every CEO hears this message. Now, only you can decide whether or not you're going to act on it or not. Only you can take that risk assessment and risk tolerance and apply it to your business. I just don't want our CEOs to not be aware that this is happening, and this will happen. So it's not how do you get CEOs' attention. It is a CEO issue.
Thanks, Joe. So there's a follow-on question to that cyber question, and
Sure.
and I think it's more so for the audience, and it is for chambers that have invested in cybersecurity. Any takeaways on discussing the importance of cybersecurity with members? So I don't think that's so much for you, Joe, but it's definitely trying to get some best practices.
Again, I have a chart where we ask questions about, do you have an active and vibrant cybersecurity strategy that's communicated and updated? And we get the answer of yes, it is. We get an answer of yes, but it's not current. We get an answer of no, but we're working on it, and we get an answer of no. And you take those last 3, yes, but it's not current, yes, but we're working on it, no, we don't have it. 64% of CEOs responded in that to those questions. That suggests 2/3, let's call it 2/3 are at some level of threat beyond what having a full defense up. And that just horrified me. So I think it's a question of raising awareness to all that it exists. I know it's an eat your broccoli message. There's no rainbows and unicorns and puppies and kitty cats in that message, but it's the dark side of technology. And my concern was that not enough people were taking it seriously enough. So I was just gonna make it a point to communicate that frequently and often, because it is avoidable. And again, I have stories for the rest of the afternoon of how people got hit. And I know that someone listening to this, one of your members, is going to get hit in the next couple of weeks. It's just statistically going to happen. I just hope it's not. I just hope it's not you or me. So anyway, so that would be my advice: is that you need to mention this constantly, because it's not going to go away, and it's like a big business that can absorb the hit. This will take a small and mid-sized business down as quick as a heart attack. So I take it that seriously, and that's why I share it everywhere.
Okay. So, Joe, one more question, and it is: did your studies specify or find any interest in industry-specific information? Anything you can share on hand?
Well, I don't think. I mean, there were some nuances when you talk about industries like manufacturing, construction, wholesale trade. There, your talent issues are much more based upon attracting worker level people willing to do work. Trucking industry. I had a trucking executive tell me there's 300,000 open jobs in trucking. Why? Well, because no one's going into trucking because of automated trucking that's coming, right? But still, truckers who engage in that lifestyle, and there's a definite lifestyle to it, but they make very, very good money for driving a truck, but they can't get workers. Same thing in construction, same thing in manufacturing. So at that, in those markets, it's much more about getting people who will show up on time, have basic social skills, and can pass a drug test. And then they're now taking on the training. Where in other more professional services, more knowledge worker-based businesses, it's much more about how do you compete for and then retain the knowledge workers that you have in place, right? Again, you come back to a small and mid-sized business, it doesn't have the energy, it doesn't have the resources of an enterprise company. So what is it that you have to offer that's going to bring a college-educated knowledge worker into the business? And then that connects to now your managers and your leadership team. As you grow, you have to grow that. So it creates there are nuances that are more vertically aligned as you would begin to accept when you talk about talent. The technology issues span all verticals. Everyone's dealing with that issue. There's nothing unique about that. And then there's some regional nuances. Again, the majority of nuances come in when you talk about vertical and people, and then geography and people availability. And we see some interesting factors in terms of how people compete on price, how they compete on culture, how they compete on the actual job itself. But again, we didn't want to, in this particular instance, pull out specific vertical markets. We do, however, have created 5 different vertical cuts of data that show just some of the nuance to it. So we're not really at this point ready to go deep into the vertical nature of it. But I think those would be a few talking points about the people and the technology.
Thanks, Joe. So we're 1 minute away from the top of the hour. Tenja, we'll turn it over to you.
I'd just like to say thank you, everyone, for your time and attention today. Again, I realize my content is not targeted to you per se, but it is what your members are thinking about. These are the decisions, these are the investments, and these are the priorities. So I hope you got some value from that and really appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And again, Joe, Galvin, and Nandaming, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it, and this was definitely an informative webinar. Again, everyone, this webinar will be sent to you all. We will have recorded it, and we have the link, so we will be sure to send it to all attendees, okay? I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Take care wherever you are, and thanks again for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.